Well, joining us now, back with us from Center for Foreign Relations, he's the author of the new book, UNWOKE, How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America. He's Senator Ted Cruz. Good to see you, Senator. It's great to have you back on. So, anti-Israel protesters marched in Delaware this weekend on the president's home. They protested in Grand Central Station in New York. Cops had to shelter in place. Even climate activist Greta Thunberg joined in on these anti-Israel protests. Your new book talks about controversies like this. When you saw all of this, Senator, what was your reaction?
Well, Liz, it's great to be with you. Look, seeing what's happening at university campuses across the country is horrifying. And you're right that my brand new book, UNWOKE, explains exactly what's going on, why we're seeing this rabid anti-Semitism on college campuses, why we're seeing it in the House of Representatives among the squad. And the reason is simple. This book explains how the radical left has taken over every major institutions of our nation. And in particular, the cultural Marxists begin by viewing the entire world as a constant conflict, a battle between oppressors and victims. Originally, Karl Marx looked at it socioeconomically as a battle between the owners of capital and the proletariat, the workers. And the solution he called for was the violent revolution of the proletariat to forcibly overthrow the oppressors and use government to redistribute the wealth. Well, as the book UNWOKE explains, that philosophy infiltrated the universities, and there it mutated. And the reason we're seeing this anti-Semitism is to the radical left. They have coded Jews as oppressors, and they have coded Palestinians as victims, and accordingly, the cultural Marxists support the violent revolution of the so-called victims against the oppressors, and indeed, they're more than willing to turn a blind eye to horrific acts of violence. That explains why 35 student groups at Harvard, my alma mater, signed an idiotic, ignorant, and racist statement saying 100% of the violence carried out by Hamas terrorists, the murdering of civilians, the raping of women and children, the slaughter of infants, that it is 100% Israel's fault, and it's why we see these protests all across the country. This is who the radical left is.
You know, now we've got, though, it seems like a growing pushback. We're going to get into this deeper in the show. Columbia University banned these anti-Israel student groups. They suspended them. You got UCLA, I think 100 faculty members said you got to denounce what's going on with these anti-Israel protests. They're normalizing terrorists. They're normalizing terrorism and their atrocities. I mean, now the administration is divided. We have an Associated Press NORC survey. Senator, nearly 70% of Democrats, the Democrats approve of Biden, of course, but the number drops to 50 when it comes to what he's doing with the conflict between Israel and Hamas. And then, Senator, you had 100 State Department and U.S. aid employees. They signed a memo saying, listen, the White House has to reassess their policy toward Israel. So there's a divide inside this White House.
Well, there's a radicalization of the Democrat Party, which is what my brand new book, UNWOKE, is all about, that the radicals have taken over universities and K-12 education and journalism and government and big business and big tech and entertainment and science, and it explains how all of that happened. You know, when you look at what the Biden administration has done so far, it's actually remarkable because at every stage of this war, the Biden White House and the Biden State Department have undermined the government of Israel. Literally, within the first few hours of the Hamas atrocities, the State Department was tweeting out, calling on Israel, do not retaliate, do not strike back. They have been urging from day one Israel not to kill the terrorists. And yet, for the radical left in the Democrat Party, that's not enough. They want the Biden White House to be unequivocally on the side of the terrorists. And I got to say, at universities, you're right. There are some people who are speaking out against the anti-Semitism, but it has been really sad at our elite universities. We just saw news at MIT that Jewish students were prevented from going to campus and were frightened by anti-Israel mobs, and we're telling Fox that they felt scared and frightened for their safety. And where is the administration of MIT? Where is the administration at these universities? It's a really simple principle. If one student threatens or harasses another student, the student who's making the threats should be expelled, and yet these universities are so woke they won't stand up to this anti-Semitism.
But they could be on the wrong side of history. Senator Ted Cruz, it's good to have you back on. It's good to see you. Let's